All right, before we hop into the video this week, a little bit of housekeeping. Last week and the week before, we've been giving away a week's access to DFS On Demand along with access to our Slack channel, which is brand new and a lot of fun. So the winner for this week is Joey McCormick. Congratulations. I will get in touch with you and we will get you set up for a week's in our Slack channel. If you are interested in winning a week to DFS On Demand and joining us in Slack, which was a lot of fun sweating the Players Championship last week, leave a comment below and tell me, are you buying back in on Paul Casey, who burned us all last week? He's the defending champion this week. Are we going to forgive and forget? Or is he in the doghouse? Leave a comment below and I will pick another winner next week. Talk to you guys in a second. All right, the Valspar Championship, which is being played at the Copperhead course at Innisbrook Resort. Final leg of the Florida swing here, and it's kind of a unique course in a lot of ways. First of all, it's going to play extremely difficult. Basically, outside the majors, this is going to be the toughest course these guys see all year long. I think last year it ranked 6th in terms of difficulty. We'll see the winning score probably be around 10 under, depending on conditions. A few years, I mean, it could be 9 under. It could definitely be single digits. If it gets into double digits, it's probably not going to get to, it's definitely not going to get to 18, 19, 20, I'd imagine. It usually sits in the, low double digits, maybe 11, 12 under par. So we're going to look for a lot of guys that are not only birdie makers, but guys who avoid making bogeys. And then the other interesting thing, it is a par 71, but there are 5 par 3s, and they're usually long par 3s. So we're going to look at par 3 scoring this week. The par 4s are actually probably going to play over par. You might have to make your hay on these par 5s, but they're tough to, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can slice this up, but we'll take a look at each one of them. But we're going to start here with the cheat sheet. And as usual, everything you see here today is available on dfsondemand.com or will be shortly, which I'll get to in a second. I want to jump right down here to the pricing for this week. And let me see if I can adjust this a little bit so you can see it better. All right. This might be a little bit better. There we go. What's interesting here is we've got another 5 guys over $10,000. It's a pretty decent field, but extremely top heavy. So you got Dustin Johnson, Jon Rahm, Jason Day, all three 10,700 or more. And what the interesting thing about these guys is for all intents and purposes, they've never played here. DJ missed the cut in 2010, has not played here since. Rahm has never teed it up at the Copperhead course. Jason Day played 4 times, but has not played since 2013. He's made 4 cuts, but so if you go look at the last 5 years, there is no course history for the top 3 players in the field. So I wonder how that's going to affect ownership when usually, we're looking for a convergence of recent form and course history. Well, those top 3 guys will not have course history, or at least relevant course history for you. Then you start getting into a handful of other guys, and you'll notice this just absolutely drops off a cliff here. Just to kind of talk you through that, like Jim Furyk is $9,200. If Jim Furyk, who obviously has played well recently, is $9,200, this field gets weak in a hurry. So what are we going to do here at the top? Well, I have to point out a few things. Dustin Johnson, literally last week, and I'm gonna pull this up real quick, and I'll show you. This is last week. In strokes gained tee to green. So here we go. I'll sort this by tee to green if you're watching on the video. DJ was 3rd in the field, only to Kuchar and McIlroy. What you'll notice here is DJ, the big thing here is he was pretty neutral off the tee. He only gained about half a stroke total over the course of the week. To put that into perspective, Rory gained 5.5 strokes off the tee, 6.5 on approaches, and basically that's how he won this golf tournament. DJ, all of his basically came on approaches. 9.6 strokes gained on approaches, which is the stat that we're looking for. If you go back and look at DJ off the tee, like how often is he going to be neutral? And the answer is pretty rarely, right? So here's his off the tee numbers. You can see the 4 rounds at the Players Championship. Gained a half on Thursday, 1.5 on Friday, and then lost on the weekend. But if you look back at this, I mean, gained all 4 in Mexico. Was somewhat neutral at the Genesis. Gained both rounds at AT&T. Gained 2 of the 4 rounds at the Century Tournament of Champions. He's gaining off the tee more often than he is losing, which is the one thing that he really lacked last week. So if he can continue to fire darts, if he can continue to play well with his second shots, you'd think he'd almost be unbeatable here just when you start adding up all the numbers. I'd be remiss if I didn't show you Jon Rahm here, who quite honestly is an animal. And if we're talking off the tee, so there are going to be a lot of demanding tee shots at Copperhead this year, and just in general. Like, you have to be really sharp. You don't want to miss in the wrong spot. A lot of dog legs. Like, you just have to be really sharp off the tee. And if you're looking for sharp guys off the tee, like, there's basically no one sharper than Jon Rahm. I mean, if you're looking at this, he has gained strokes off the tee in every single round since the start of 2019, which is the Tournament of Champions. He has not had one round where he lost strokes. And we're not talking like, he's gaining half a stroke around. Like, he is legitimately lapping the field when it comes to off the tee numbers. It's really, really impressive stuff. And what I think is really interesting about this is Rahm didn't have a ton of backers last week, but he had a very high profile collapse, essentially. So if you were a backer of Rahm last week, you probably feel pretty unsatisfied. He left you, hitting that bunker shot into the water on Sunday, leaves you with a really bad taste in your mouth, right? You thought he probably should have won that golf tournament. It's probably true. He probably should have won that golf tournament. So you're probably not likely to go right back to him again. And if you didn't play him, you're kind of sitting around going, well, he kind of collapsed a little bit, and there's really, I can go pay up for Dustin Johnson, or I can go get somebody else like Jason Day. I don't really have to play Rahm here. I think it creates an interesting dynamic where he could be pretty underpriced as one of like the hottest guys in the field with the way that he played last week and the way that his stats have been in 2019. So I'll kind of get a feel for the rest of the industry a little bit, but that's my general thesis on Rahm at this point in the week. All right, I'll try not to keep jumping back and forth to the cheat sheet here, but I will. There's 2 guys I really need to talk about. Paul Casey will save for a second, and I'll start here at $9,500 with Patrick Reed, who I'm loving in almost every possible way. Let's just start with the fact that the last 4 years here, he's never missed a cut. He has 2 seconds, a 7th, and a 38th in his last 4 starts at Copperhead, and was playing awesome last week at the Players before he just absolutely ejects on Sunday. And let me show you what that ejection looks like. So I'm just going to flip to 4th round stats here. And again, this tool's not nearly complete yet. This is something I've been sharing with the Slack channel. If you're in our Slack channel, you have access to this tool. I'm still working out the kinks on the refresh when it's available. I'll make it live. It'll be a live leaderboard with fantasy stats and with strokes gain stats, which is what you're seeing right now. So if we just sort this by strokes gain total just for the 4th round, you'll see that Reed and Keimer are tied for dead last here. Okay, both losing 6.7 strokes in the final round, a pure ejection by these guys. Both 6 over. But they did it in very different ways. Keimer did it by losing 6 strokes tee to green. That is not ideal. He lost in every single category. Patrick Reed, on the other hand, the vast majority of his 6.5 strokes that he lost, over 5 of them, he lost on the putting greens. Sure, he lost 1.8 on approaches, but like absolutely ejected to losing 5 strokes over the course of one single round. So if we look up, and I guess there's a couple ways I can do this. I've got strokes gained data everywhere here. We'll go here. We'll look up Patrick Reed. And if we go to his putting stats, he is not a very consistent putter, for lack of a better term. Just over the course of, since the Arnold Palmer, he's lost strokes in 6 of 8 rounds. But longer term, he's almost always gaining. You can see from the start of the Sony to the end of the WGC, that was 7, 9, 12 rounds that we had shot link data on. He gained putting in 11 of them. And he can gain in a big way. It's not just a half a stroke here or there. There are literally rounds where his putter can get scorching hot, like we've seen at Ryder Cups and things like that, where he goes out and, gains 3 strokes. Approaches as well, very volatile, but you can see, basically those 2 rounds the final round of the Players and the first round of the Players were 2 of the worst approach rounds that he had. So he's a guy who's going to be volatile, but this is just a really good chance to buy back in on someone who was playing well last week and did something that he's rarely going to do again. Like, to put this into perspective, Patrick Reed gains strokes putting 64% of his rounds. That is more than Jon Rahm. That is more than Justin Rose. It's more than Tiger. It's more than JT. It's more than Bryson. It's more than Jason Day. It's basically more than everyone. Okay. There's only a handful of the elite players that gain strokes putting more often than Patrick Reed does, Ricky Fowler being one of them. But that is to put into perspective that he had an all-time terrible final round putting that is likely it's unlikely to happen again. And that was really the thing that knocked him out of the tournament. Now he gets to a place where he's got great course history. He's been playing well in all other facets. Like, I'm going to have a ton of Patrick Reed here. I can't believe I'm saying that, but I'm going to have to. And then Paul Casey, again, I'll flip to this pretty quickly. I mean, he, if you rostered him last week, which a lot of us did, I had him in my core lineup. I played him in cash. Puts 2 in the water on 17 on Thursday, never makes it back up. I think he ended up making a triple. He lost 4 strokes. And I can actually pull this up here, I suppose. Here he is. He's, one of the worst players in the field, just kind of lost it everywhere. The 4 strokes he lost tee to green in 2 rounds is basically more combined than all of the other rounds that he's lost strokes in since the start of 2019. He's a much more consistent player, obviously. He's your defending champion. So I think he might get a boost because of that, but he really screwed over, 20 or 25% of the industry last week by missing the cut. And again, it's a situation that's probably not going to happen often. So buying back in. Going back to the cheat sheet a little bit, I hate to say this, Jim Furyk is probably a pretty good fit, but I'm not going to pay $9,200. I don't think he can kind of repeat this. If he does and he proves me wrong, that's fine. Jason Kokrak, who we talk about every single week, and I guess we have to continue to talk about because he makes the cut again last week. Let's see. Kokrak ended up finishing 47th last week. So now his last 6 starts are 47th, 10th, 9th, 37th, 20th, 20th. If you go and look at his course history here, he has 3 top 15s in the last 5 years. Only $8,600, but now this is a field that is much more manageable. That players field, for him to finish 47th in, okay, Jason Kokrak, know your role kind of thing. Like he's going to do better in fields like this that fall off a cliff, and he's he might be the 25th best player in this field. Last week he might have been the 70th. I don't know. I'm making that up, but you get the idea. It's a strength of field situation. So Kokrak is one of these guys we're probably going to have to buy again. I'd much rather pay for Kokrak than someone like a Jim Furyk. All right, we're going to go rapid fire here as we scroll down, and then we'll get to the key stats. Steve Stricker, we don't get a lot of Steve Stricker. He only plays the tournaments that he knows he fits. This would be another one. A lot of dog legs. You don't have to be, being super long isn't necessarily a prerequisite for success here. He's piled up 2 top 12s in the last 3 years. He's someone who's at least a little bit interesting. Nick Taylor, I think he led the field in, let's see here, led the field in strokes gained approach last week, I believe. Let's see, no, third. So it was DJ, Keegan, and Nick Taylor. So again, I always do like to look back at the previous week. So what you're looking at right now is the Players' Championship strokes gained data. So if you're looking for strokes gained approach, you get DJ, Keegan, Nick Taylor. Obviously, not all of these guys are playing again this week. Snedeker he's showing us quite a bit recently. Russell Knox he's showing us quite a bit recently. These are guys that I would want to get on. In terms of strokes gained total, we will buy back in on Kuchar at some point. Kuchar, like quick side note, because I know he's not in the field this week. Only Rory was better tee to green, and he lost nearly 7 strokes putting. We're buying back in on Kuchar every chance we get moving forward. Some other guys that we might want to fit in here. I'm trying to think who else is in the field this week. Again, here Knox pops up tee to green. Louis Oosthuizen, losing so many on approach and losing so many putting is probably not going to happen again. He's going to be someone that we take an eye at a good look at when we start building lineups, but keep that in mind. But let's wrap this up with some of the key stats here. So we talked a little bit about Copperhead. There wasn't really anything super compelling here, quite honestly. The better players rise to the top. They don't necessarily win. We've seen a couple outliers win this tournament in the past, but they usually perform well in terms of DraftKings points, which is what these stats are correlated against. So keep that in mind. But other than that, we're looking for the best players. We're looking for birdie makers, and we're looking for guys that can avoid bogey. So let's kind of start here. Let's do SDFA. That's a stat. It's strokes differential field average, I believe is what it stands for, but it's a per round statistic to kind of show you how you're doing against the rest of the field. Jason Day, Dustin Johnson, Lucas Glover are your top 3 guys there. These are always going to be your top players, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. Let's look at birdie makers. All right, birdie makers. Woodland's on here. Woodland could be another bounce back candidate. I don't know how much buzz he's going to end up getting this week, but elite in terms of birdies, elite in terms of par 4s, elite in terms of par 5s. Woodland could be a really good option. Jason Day shows up here. Guys like Wyndham Clark or Terrell Hatton also make a lot of birdies, believe it or not. Our buddy Jason Kokrak is like 6th best in this category, making birdies 25% of the time. The flip side of this, avoiding bogeys. How often are you making bogeys? Lucas Glover, who, another one of these guys that I guess the Magic's probably going to run out at some point, but much better field for him this week instead of the Players, and pretty significantly the best at avoiding bogeys in this field. Makes bogey 9% of the time. DJ makes it nearly 11%. Then it's Webb Simpson, then it's Kevin Tway, then it's Jim Furyk. Those guys just don't make birdie or bogeys. There was a stat, I tweeted this out. There was a stat, I think Jim Furyk has something like 215 bogey-free rounds in his career, which is 1,000% absurd. Like, really absurd. I got to go look and see who's second, third, fourth on that list, but it's nuts. Louis also pops up here too. Does not make a lot of bogeys. Very, very solid. All right. Talked a little bit about the par 3s. Because there are 5 of them, I wanted to include this. I don't usually include this stat. Alex Cheka at $6,000, the bare minimum, is actually the best in the field in par 3s. Par 3 scoring averages 2.92 strokes. Now, he stinks at every single other category, so I don't know how much I could get behind it. But then he's followed up very closely by Zach Johnson at 7,600, which is a name that you could absolutely play. Danny Lee's here. Lucas Glover is here again. Jason Day is down here for bigger names that we're trying to pop off on. So That's an interesting one. Par fours, not as important this week, but Louis leads the way. Lucas Glover is second. This is one of those situations where we are going to talk ourselves into Lucas Glover. We did this with Matt every 1 week when he popped off every single time, and he ended up doing pretty well. Lucas Glover might be another one of those guys that gets into our lineups. 9,000 is a little steep, but he seems to fit the mold quite a bit here. Webb Simpson, Gary Woodland, Jason Day, Jason Kokrak, all par 4 scorers. And then if you look at the par 5 scorers, Woodland again, I mean, statistically, Woodland is going to be a really, really good play for me. I'll see in terms of roster construction if I can get him in and how often I can get him in. But Woodland is awesome. And we've seen him, don't quote me on this. I'll look it up and tweet it out. But doing this on the fly, Woodland has found success at less than driver courses, and not to say that this is a less than driver course, but a course with a lot of dog legs where you have to be in the right spot, kind of a corollary. So I think that I'll go look up his numbers and see if I can tweet it out. Wyndham Clark again, Adam Hadwin, Bubba, Nick Watney, and then actually Paul Casey, defending champion, one of the best in par 5 scoring in the field, which I think is interesting because usually we equate par 5 scoring with long hitters. Paul Casey, not particularly long, but usually pretty good with his wedges, can putt a little bit on occasion, and makes a lot of birdies on par 5. So those are the guys that I'll probably be circling my core around. I'm very interested to hear what you guys are going to be doing with the players that saw a large increase in price. So we saw a lot of players get a decrease in price heading into the Players' Championship. This week, it's a much weaker field. Everybody gets boosted back up. So Jim Furyk, for example, all the way back up to $9,200 or whatever he is. What are we going to do? Are we going to avoid those guys? Are we willing to pay it off? Let me know. Tweet me. It's @DFS On Demand, or leave a comment below. I'll talk to you guys soon. See ya.